Hi, this is the retake ticket for Learning Target 3 midpoint and distance formula. Hopefully you've got your retake ticket with you, but otherwise you can write these formulas down and record these points alongside me here and learn to use these formulas. We'll start by writing them down. The distance formula we'll start with over here. Given 2 points, you've always got an x and a y, x1, y1 and x2, y2, the distance formula, oftentimes written with a d, is the square root, and you're trying to find the distance between the x's. So it truthfully doesn't really matter which direction you subtract them. Right now I'm going to start x2 minus x1, and then we add together y2, and we subtract y1. So first start by recording that onto your paper, making sure that you've got everything, every detail accounted for. There's subtraction in between the x's and subtraction between the y's, along with addition between those two big parts of the distance formula, those expressions there. So let's go ahead and use the distance formula right away. We'll come back for the midpoint formula. Here are 2 points, and I always like to start by labeling my coordinates. So I'll zoom in right here and just look at point F. This is going to be my x1, and this is going to be my y1. I just chose them as x1, y1 because those are my first coordinates. I'll go over to R, and I will make those the x2, y2 coordinates. Alright, so we have our coordinates labeled, we've got our distance formula there, we're going to plug them in. So I'll start again with the distance is equal to the square root of, in my first parenthesis will be my x's subtracted. I start with x2, so it's negative 8 minus, notice I write the minus and then I go and look and see what the next term is. So it's x1, well that's a 0. And I square that, plus now I'm in my y's. My y2 is 11, and my y1 is 3, so I'll subtract 3 squared. Alright, this is the hardest part, setting up the formula. Now it's just a matter of adding, subtracting, and then making sure that you square everything correctly. The distance formula, the last thing you'll do is do the square root. But for now, we will simplify inside these parentheses. Negative 8 minus 0 is just negative 8. 11 minus 3 is positive 8. Negative 8 and positive 8 should give you the same answer when you square them. Make sure that you have the parentheses. These parentheses around this negative 8 is going to be really important here, making sure that you've got that negative inside there. When you do this on your calculator, or if you're typing most of this in as you go, 64 for negative 8 squared, 64 for positive 8 squared, that makes the square root of 128. And typically on a C-level question, I'll just ask you for the decimal rounded to 1 decimal place. So we're going to call this 11.3. We'll go through one more example here, again being very careful that we start by labeling our x's and y's. I'll start with this as x1 and y1, this as x2 and y2. So we've got the distance formula. It is there for you still on your paper. The distance formula equals the square root of, we'll start with our x's, and again it's x2, which is a 2, minus, then go and find x1 is 8. Close the parentheses, square it. Now you're adding in between. This time I'm looking for y2. y2 is 3. And you are subtracting. And then go and find y1. It is a negative 7. That negative 7 is going to look a little bit odd because we have two subtraction signs here, but that's just how you have to do it. This subtraction will turn into addition because two subtractions turn into addition. So now we can simplify this, keep going down the distance formula here. We can start by dealing with inside the parentheses. 2 minus 8 is negative 6, all squared. And then over here we've got 3. This turns into plus 7, so it's 10 squared. Six squared, or negative 6 squared, is 36, and 10 squared is 100. So this turns out to be the square root of 136. Rounding to one decimal place, you'll find that this is 11.7. It's 11.66. That last 6 tells me to round it up to 7. So the distance formula, I think, is the harder of the two. If you have worked through those, you are welcome to go ahead and try the backside distance formula questions. If you want to come back to the midpoint later, you can. But here we've got the midpoint formula now. Again, given two coordinates and you are going to find a midpoint, I like to call that xy. Just to remind myself that it is in fact a coordinate. It is a point. And it's just as simply as finding the average. So you're going to add them up, x1 and x2, and you are going to divide by how many you have, 2. Same over here, y1 and y2, divide by how many you have. That is a coordinate, so you should have parentheses around it and a comma between the two numbers. And simplify all the way to the end. The most difficult fraction that you can get is always going to be divided by 2, and so it's really just going to be 1/2 or 0.5. Could be a decimal that you're going to be dealing with. So we'll go down to the third one here, and we're trying to find the midpoint between those two given points. So the midpoint formula is going to give us a coordinate. It's an x and a y. And I will average the x's, I'll average the y's. So I've got negative 3 plus 11 over 2, and I've got a 2 plus 2 all over 2. Close that parenthesis off. So our midpoint, negative 3 plus 11. Negative 3 plus 11 is kind of like 11 minus 3. That's an 8 over 2. 2 plus 2 is 4. On top over 2. And we'll leave that in a coordinate the whole time. And we'll leave that in a coordinate the whole time. 8 divided by 2 is 4. 4 divided by 2 is 2. And here is the midpoint. 4, 2. Number 4. Same idea here. We're going to try to find a midpoint. It's going to be a coordinate xy. Your coordinate will have a 12 in an x and a negative 9. Okay. And then a negative 4 and a positive 9. We've got 12 plus a negative 9, which is really like 12 minus 9. That's a 3 on top and a 2 on bottom. That will be a decimal. This one is a negative 4 and a positive 9, so that's really like 9 minus 4, which is 5 over 2 here. This would be an acceptable way to answer the question. If we wanted to go one more step, we could ask for the decimal. 3 divided by 2 is 1 1/2. 5 divided by 2 is 2 1/2. 2.5. Either one of these answers is okay. Both of them are simplified in their own way. All right, so if you follow along with us here, you've got 4 questions done. You've got 6 questions on the next page where you can practice. The first bank of questions is a distance, so you will use the distance formula. The second bank of questions is the midpoint formula. I recommend right now flipping that paper over. I will go back to the top of this page and freeze it so you can write the distance and midpoint formula right next to those sections, and you can practice these on your own.